YouTube, how's it going? The Goat House is back. Just after the NFL franchise tag deadline, there was some tags given out. I'm here to break them down, but grade them as well. We'll grade the team based on the tag they gave out. Also want to talk about a team that did not give out a franchise tag. Was a little surprised about that. Have some thoughts on that. So excited to break this all down. We'll have a similar grades video for we'll have several throughout free agency with waves of different free agency signings. So really excited. I always love doing those. We have free agency coverage, trade coverage, NFL draft coverage. We got you covered, as you can tell. So subscribe, like, turn the notifications on so you don't miss a thing. Live discussions on Twitter already were underway for all these franchise tags and the quarterback extensions like Daniel Jones. So my thoughts on there. If you're not following our Twitter, you're missing out. There's a link pinned in the comments for that, as well as our Discord, as well as our sponsors, which you see underneath me right now: GLD Shop, Liquid IV, Walk the Mock. The first franchise tag we'll talk about here is Daron Payne for the Commanders, and I'm going to grade that one an A. It pays $18.937 million. You'll see the prices at the bottom left of your screen there. And I mean, that's pretty damn pricey, but this was a guy that was going to generate a lot of money, really, and offers interest in free agency after a monster season. Still a very young defensive tackle, still kind of adding, the pass rush aspect to his game, and we've seen it very solid in the past, but really solid last year. So he probably, I would think around anywhere in the range of $17.75 million per year to $20 million per year. Maybe 20's pushing a little bit. So we're somewhat in the middle there. It's a little pricey, but I think worth it for a guy like Daron Payne, and they'll continue to work on a long-term deal. I think if he got the free agency, somebody probably offers something crazy, maybe close to that $20 million per year on a long-term deal. And Payne's been very solid, but that money, that price line is he's really only worth based on this past year. So one season, and I think he'll continue to be good, obviously, but that kind of makes the tag, and again, they could work out a deal long term, but that makes the tag a little more comfortable, I suppose, comforting, because what if he doesn't produce like he did last year, and then some team would have gave him a huge deal, lengthy deal with that price. So you never know. It's always a little bit of a gamble when it comes to free agency. But overall, I think this is good for the Commanders. The only downside with tags, and again, they could reach a deal. I'm going to keep saying that. Deals can be reached long term. They have until July 15th to do that. But the only downside with the tag is the tag number, in this case, 18.937. That's your cap hit. Like if you sign a guy for that price averaged out per year, you can spread the cap hits out. You can structure the contract how you want to structure it. With the franchise tag, that's what it is. That's the cap hit. So it is a very large cap hit year one. That's always the downside of tags. But the Commanders, a decent amount of cap space. They cleared a big amount of cap space while moving on from Carson Wentz, which was expected, obviously. So they can kind of afford this year. I think it's okay if they keep him on the tag, or if they reach a long-term deal with him, I guess, depending on the price. Long term, it shouldn't be much different from around this price range, but then they can structure it how they want to. So overall, this is good. Not allowing, number one, not allowing Daron Payne to hit free agency. There's a lot of teams in need of interior defense alignment, and he fits like the teams trying to win right now, and the teams in rebuild, the teams in retool, in the middle, anywhere. He fits every single team looking for a defensive tackle because he's got upside. He's young. He's really good already. So he would have been a hot name. So I give the Commanders an A for those reasons there on this one. Evan Engram, the Jags tagged him. Somewhat of a tough decision between him and Juwan Taylor. And I'm not saying that they should have tagged Juwan Taylor, as a little pricey. But after thinking about this one more and more, I'm like a little, I still gave it a B-. So it's not like I gave him a bad grade here. Like overall, they get a tight end back that worked very well with them last year. And so that's solid. Maybe they want to see how and again, they could reach on a long-term deal with him, but they want to see maybe how he works if you add another piece like Calvin Ridley in there. How does this all go together? Just having an extra weapon, does it open things up for everybody? Does it open things up for Engram? Guys like Ridley, guys like Zay Jones, or like Christian Kirk a little bit more. So those are the positives there overall. So there's, there's really no reason to give it a bad grade. But the more I was thinking about this, so the tag is $11.345 million. The Jags have been restructuring, adding void years to deals, which pushes money back back into the future, to clear space. Now they clear that space, and then the tag again comes with that full cap hit of the tag price. You can't really spread that out. And then Calvin Ridley, which is a good thing, was reinstated, so that was around just over $11 million as well. So now the Jaguars are back into the negative when it comes to cap space. If they would have reached somewhat of a long-term deal with him, they could have spread that out, saved a little more space. But at the same time, how much is Engram really worth? I do think he's worth around this range, $11.345 million. What if you let him hit free agency? Would he have gotten offered that much more than this? Could you have gotten him back on a smaller deal where you can spread the caps out around this price, maybe less? A possibility. If you lost him in free agency because it was just more than this, it was too much, was that really going to make or break the Jags? I don't really think so. And now while they work on a long-term deal, this is the starting point for Evan Engram, 11.345. So in a long-term deal, maybe it's not super long, maybe it's 2-3 years, whatever it may be, is the starting point. So he's probably going to get more than this, which is a little pricey. He was good last year. It was really his only good year of his career, though. So they're in a little bit of a tough spot because of this. So that's why I kind of made it, a B minus, add that minus onto it. But overall, they get a solid guy back. I don't think it's too rich for him as it sits on the tag. They are a little thin on cap space, but so overall there are some positives. But more I was thinking about it. Yeah, this is a starting point. He's gonna ask for more money. Do they want him long term? Is it worth it? What would have happened if he did free agency? Would they have been? It would end the world if they lost him free agency? No. So I gave it a B minus here. Curious to see what the Jags do. Juwan Taylor will now be a free agent. If they tagged him, it would probably have been too expensive, over $18 million. But somebody probably breaks the bank for him. So that could be a tough loss, but they very much want him back. So we'll see what happens there. Josh Jacobs in the Raiders. I gave the Raiders an A+ for the tag on Josh Jacobs, which is $10.091 million for running backs. This is fantastic. Josh Jacobs he was my favorite running back in free agency. I still think he's got a lot left in the tank. That's what you worry about with free agent running backs, because you're most likely going to sign them long term. Jacobs is a guy I would sign long term. I'm just a huge fan of him. I think he's just getting going. A lot left in the tank and just continuing to get better. But they tag him, so they keep him around for another year, which is fantastic. He was great for them. And at $10.091 million, that's a great price. The 1 year deal, like I said, I would have gave Jacobs a long-term deal, which they still could. I don't think they will, but they still could. But a 1 year deal might be even better, because running backs are a little scary. What if they get injured? What if they take a step down? I don't expect that with Jacobs. But 1 year at a really good price at $10.091, when it's a really good team price, sometimes it's a bad thing because the players aren't happy about it. But the Raiders almost did him a favor. They declined the option, which I didn't factor into this because we're kind of living in the now right now. The options, they lost $2 million about out of it, but that's in the past. This is kind of the decision now. That's what I graded. So Jacobs actually gains money because they didn't pick up the option and they gave him the franchise tag. Obviously, he could get a little bit more, but I wouldn't imagine he'd be. It is a little bit of an undervalue, but I wouldn't imagine he'd be super upset and wouldn't play. I wouldn't think, but overall, this could be good for both sides here, and the Raiders could bring him back and, because signing a running back long term kind of goes against the philosophy of Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler, that Patriots way. So they bring him back on the 1 year deal and really see maybe this is the guy we change that for. So it'd be good to see another year under that, or maybe that's still their philosophy and they let him walk, but at least you got one more year at a reasonable price on him. And you can lose him free agency next year, perhaps grab a compensatory pick. Maybe make a decision at the trade deadline, perhaps. A lot of scenarios here, which is good, a good thing for the Raiders. So overall, I think this is, and you could reach a long-term deal still, and I'm good with giving Jacobs, unless you're going stupid money, which I don't think they would. I'm good with that, though, because I think Jacobs, if I had to pick a running back, that would be a guy that I'd actually be okay with somewhat of a long-term deal. But overall, I think this is great for the Las Vegas Raiders here, so they get an A+. Tony Pollard, somewhat in the same situation. Obviously he's not as good as Jacobs, but we also aren't really grading the player's talent here. Same price, $10.091. He's coming off the injury, which do you sign a long-term deal for a guy that's just coming off an injury. You get your, maybe your best back here in Tony Pollard. You might move on from Zeke, so you don't want to need another running back too. So you have Pollard back. That's great. A long-term deal. What kind of price point would that look like? I think the Cowboys would have got outbid probably on what they would pay in free agency. So this is a pretty fair deal here at 10. I think on both sides, 10.091. They do need cap space, and they have the full. That is a full. The tag. Full tag is the full cap hit. So for this year, so that maybe is the little bit of a downside there for the Dallas Cowboys. And again, he is coming off injury. So I think he's a key piece. I was going to say, did you really need a running back coming off injury? Losing cap space of over $10 million. I guess somewhat debatable, but I think he is a key piece to the Cowboys. So this was the right decision here, even over Dalton Schultz there at an A. And then so I might surprise people with the grade here. I really thought about this one because this was the shocking one. Not that Lamar Jackson got a tag, but that Lamar Jackson didn't get the exclusive tag. He got the non-exclusive tag. With the exclusive tag, teams couldn't negotiate with him, and they basically could have reached a deal or traded him for whatever, like a normal trade, whatever they agreed to. The non-exclusive tag, teams could talk to him in free agency. They can offer him a contract, and the Ravens have an opportunity to match. If a team comes along and offers something along the lines of what the Ravens have not been willing to pay him, then the Ravens maybe won't match, and then they get 2 first-round picks. It's basically a trade, but it has to be 2 first-round picks. So that way, the Ravens don't get full value for Lamar Jackson. You'd think he'd probably be worth a little bit more at least there. So that's kind of the situation, that he's on the regular franchise tag, non-exclusive tag. So that almost looks bad probably to some people, and it could backfire on the Ravens. Like a team could do that, and a team could break the bank or give him the guarantees he's looking for the Ravens just wouldn't give, and the Ravens like, oh god, now we can't get him, and now we're getting 2 first-round picks. If we put an exclusive tag on him, we'd be getting more than 2 first-round picks. So people may grade it poorly because of that. I'm going to grade it an A. I actually think this, and it's a little bit of a mystery. It could definitely backfire on them, but this could end up being genius here. Because the exclusive tag isn't actually set yet on the price. It's determined, what other quarterbacks get this free agency. I mean, Daniel Jones has got more than expected to, and then you total out the top quarterbacks and how much they get paid, obviously. But that I think it goes off the top 5 quarterbacks. But it's going to be around $45 million. So there's a couple different things here. They could have been stuck with that tag. Maybe if no one wanted Lamar Jackson, perhaps I think somebody would have wanted him. They could have been, and then they couldn't reach a deal. They could have been stuck with that tag, like around $45 million, which would have been the cap hit for this year. That's just too much on 1 year. But now teams are going to offer Lamar Jackson. They may offer him less than what he's been asking for, and I'm starting to think that's the case. We already heard, surprisingly, that the Falcons, very surprisingly, that the Falcons are not going to pursue Lamar Jackson, even though they can't. And the Panthers, maybe not as surprising, but somewhat surprisingly, are not going to pursue Lamar Jackson. So that's not leaving too many teams here that maybe going to be willing to spend the big money and dish a guy out with durability issues, dish him out the guarantees. So the Ravens may have been kind of right here with this. We'll have to wait and see. It is a little bit of a mystery, but teams are probably, though we're going to offer Lamar Jackson, but it's probably going to be less than what he's asking for, and things the Ravens, a contract that the Ravens would probably match. So then they can end up saving money from what they would have gave him already or on the exclusive tag where other teams can't negotiate. So I actually think, and I could be wrong, it's a gamble by the Ravens. It's a gamble maybe by me for thinking they might have done a pretty good job here. But I'm thinking that teams aren't going to give Lamar mainly the guarantees he's looking for, and the Ravens are going to end up getting him back. They're going to end up getting him back and saving money from the previous offer or requests that Lamar Jackson wanted. So that's kind of my take on that right now, but you never know. It's a gamble, and the Ravens could end up looking like geniuses here. And then Saquon Barkley with the Giants, I gave a B+, $10.091 million. We talked about the other running backs. This one was right down to the wire because Daniel Jones was expected to get it, but the Giants gave him a whopping contract. I was surprised not only about the amount, but the incentives tacked onto that. We talked a little bit about it on Twitter. We can talk a little bit right now. I think they overpaid Daniel Jones. I think the Giants panicked a little bit, a lot of it. I think if they let him walk in free agency rather than give him the $40 million per year plus $35 million incentives, would he have got an offer at that or more? No, he would not have. Would he have got an offer even close to that? I can debate no on that as well. Therefore, the Giants save money. If somebody does offer him this or what Daniel Jones got, then they give it to him because they're willing to give it to him now. Or if they offer him more, then you lose on Daniel Jones. Is it the worst thing in the world? Maybe to them, I guess it was. But so I think they panicked a little bit there, and the franchise tag was an option which could have saved them money, and it would have been a one more year trial. So I disagree what they did there. But in terms of the franchise tag, yeah, I guess you can look at it this way. Like, would you rather? I mean, overall, Saquon Barkley on the franchise tag is good. $10.091 million. It's a good price for the New York Giants. It's a one-year deal with a running back that has had injury issues in the past. This year he stayed healthy, but so it's kind of playing it safe, and it's somewhat cheap for Saquon Barkley. It's still going to be a 10.091 cap hit, but overall that's good. But you look at it like this, where it's like, would you rather tag Barkley, while knowing how much Daniel Jones got, or would you rather have the tag on Daniel Jones? If you look at it that way, then you probably rather have the tag on Daniel Jones and the ridiculous contract they gave him. I didn't really factor that in too much here with it has to play somewhat of a part, though, because you had a tough decision between Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley. You went Saquon Barkley. Like, the tag on Barkley, again, looks pretty good, just specifically on him. $10.091 million, one-year deal. That looks pretty solid. But would you have rather gave it to Jones and maybe save money in the long run, perhaps? I guess debatable, but I gave it a B+ overall. They'll have Barkley back for another year. The question is, did they even value Barkley to this amount even? I mean, this is kind of cheap for Saquon Barkley, but at the end of the year, like, he was barely getting over, I think, 18 carries per game, or 18 carries was kind of the max he had in a game for like a stretch of the second half of the season. So do they really value the running back position this much, this much here? So I guess you could debate that as well. But overall, I'll give it a B+. You do got to factor in like that a little bit. You got to factor in the decision between Jones and Barkley a little bit. But what I mainly focus on is Barkley got the tag. He's on a one-year deal at a pretty decent price. So we slapped a B+ on it here. So those are my franchise tag grades. I did want to talk about C.J. Gardner-Johnson and the Eagles, though. I was actually surprised. Well, not surprised based off the news this morning. There was reports that they won't tag anybody. But I was surprised then. I thought C.J. Gardner-Johnson was a prime candidate for the franchise tag because it would have paid him just over $14 million. I think that's a pretty good price point. Number one, that's not the most important thing here, though. But number two, they had Jonathan Gannon as a defensive coordinator. They trade for C.J. Gardner-Johnson because they have a big-time plan for him. It was reported right away what they'll do with him, and they did that with him. They played him at safety. We saw him in the back end at free safety making plays even, and they played him in the slot where he's been playing throughout his New Orleans career and where he's been good at. So the Eagles maybe it was a little, they didn't trade a whole lot, so I guess it wasn't that much of a gamble, but they saw something different. We're going to go do that. If he succeeds in that, if we succeed in that, he's more valuable because he does a lot more things. So that probably makes him more valuable than the $14 million. I think it definitely does. And why I say $14 million, the tag on C.J. Gardner-Johnson would have been just over $14 million. But Jonathan Gannon leaves. And why didn't kind of go backwards a little bit. Why didn't anybody else trade for C.J. Gardner-Johnson? Why was he so cheap? Well, a lot of teams probably just viewed him as a slot guy because that's where he's been, and teams just don't pay slot guys as much as where he's asking, which is probably north of the $14 million. And that's why the Saints ended up trading, because he was demanding a new deal. This is what he's going to be asking for. The Saints probably looking in the future like, we like you, you're good, we're not going to pay that, we're a little in the hole in the future, and you're playing just a slot for us. Those guys get paid. Even the really good ones, look at Mike Hilton, they're not getting paid much, for how good they are, really. So that's why we kind of backtrack to that, maybe why other teams didn't trade for him. So basically, other teams probably would just play him in the slot. And now Gannon's gone. They bring in Sean Desai, a different defensive coordinator. I would imagine they try to get CJ, and he's a free agent now, but I would imagine they want him back, and they would try to have him kind of do the same things. But why not just put the tag on him so he's back? You got him back. He's at a reasonable price, and you get to test him with a different defensive coordinator to see if he can be as versatile, or if he's just going to be a slot guy, or maybe he's just going to be a safety, because if the value could change depending on what he does. So now I'm assuming they didn't want to put the tag on him because they're either going to let him walk. I've had a hard time seeing that. Or they want to give him a long-term deal. Maybe he's going to get pissed with the tag, perhaps. But a long-term deal, I think he would demand way more than 14, not way more, but more than 14. So if they give him a long-term deal at 15, 16 million per year before trying him out on, the new defense, and maybe he doesn't work, maybe he only ends up being a slot, then you're just overpaying. So I thought the tag, for all those reasons I explained, was perfect. So we'll see what happens here. And I like the Eagles front office. I like Howie Roseman. I definitely like him a lot. So it's not one I'm just a group that I'm not going to trust, but I don't really agree with the thinking here unless they end up, giving him a deal and it's not super lengthy and it ends up being cheaper than I'm thinking it is. So we'll see what happens. That's a interesting one. Very curious about that to kind of watch going forward here. So those are my thoughts on the franchise tags, the franchise tag deadline day. Definitely an interesting one with Lamar Jackson, Daniel Jones, the whole Giants situation. Not a whole lot of guys tagged, I suppose. But we'll keep breaking down free agency predictions, trades predictions, all of that. The NFL draft, we got you. So subscribe to notifications on. Very, very important to follow us on Twitter. There's a link pinned in the comments, and that you're missing out if you're not following that. And Twitter subs get some bonus content as well. That's going to do it. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.